photographs reveal a cratered landscape much like the moon, waterless and apparently hostile to life.
If you look at the history of Mars, you would almost think that Mars has a conspiracy to confuse us as to what it's all about.
If you take a look at the first color picture, you see this big rock out there called Big Joe. That was about 25 or 30 feet from the lander. If we had hit that rock, the lander would have been smashed, turned over, upset. We had no hazard avoidance whatsoever, just a lot of luck, if you will.
Hello, everybody. This is Scott Roberts with Explore Scientific, and welcome to the 132nd episode of the OpenGOTO Community. With me today are our special guest, Gary Palmer, and Jerry Hubbell. We are dedicating this episode to John Joseph, who was the owner of Starlight Instruments, maker of the Feather Touch Focuser. He passed away on Wednesday, and so we want to send condolences to his family and friends and all of you out there that might have enjoyed some of his nice products. So anyways, we are, it's Friday, and we're looking forward to a great weekend. But I'm really looking forward to the European edition of the Global Star Party, Gary. So,
yeah, hi Scott. Hi,
yeah,
everyone.
we're going to host that next Friday, and
yes, yeah, looking forward to that. We're going to see if we can get a few different guests on this time, and we're starting to see a few odd days of clear weather. So you never know, we might be lucky and actually get some clear skies in Europe this time. You've gone quiet there, Scott.
sometimes how's that?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Okay.
That's pretty interesting. It never happens to Scott.
It's done that again. It's done that again, Scott.
Yeah, can't hear you again.
Let me fix this. Terrible.
Scott can just move his mouth and you can talk, Gary, and you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow. Okay. Something. There we go. Just don't touch it, Scott. Don't touch it. Okay. So anyhow, but I was mentioning even if they get cloudy weather, we have had several global star parties where almost the whole world, where we were reaching out to different people, they were clouded, that one was clouded. So, but we still have a good time. A lot of great information gets shared, and we always look forward to your great image processing. Gary, I really love the image processing tutorial that you did on the sun last global star party. So it was really great.
Yeah, thanks. It's always it's trying to come up with something different each time, because otherwise you feel like you're rolling over stuff that you've done before. But in a sense, we get a lot of new viewers who've not seen those star parties, so some of it is worth going over. We might have a look at the batch processor in PixInsight's changed. That's got a new layout and everything. So on the next star party, we'll probably be looking at that and running through the changes and how that affects everybody. Mm-hmm. It's the usual thing. If somebody shows you how it's all laid out, it seems easy. When you're hunting for the documentation on it, it's right. Not as straightforward then.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
So yeah, but we're also, like I say, we're see what guests we can get on and look at some different things.
There's something else. I got a suggestion, maybe, to go over some of the terminology. I know there's a lot of new people out there that don't understand the terminology too, so that might be something good to talk about.
Might also cover calibration frames, because it's a question that's always coming up, you know, and some people are, shall we use bias, or no, you shouldn't use bias, and what mean values for capturing flats, and then settings for dark frames. So we'll run through why they're needed, and you know, the processes of capturing them, which is pretty straightforward these days. You know, these flats panels and all of these different things are making it easy. The old days we had to build light boxes and all sorts of things.
Oh yeah.
Do you use the flat panels?
Yeah, I've got one here. In actual fact, it's right there by my feet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Now you just
so,
lay that over the front of the telescope or something?
Yeah, so it just literally sits over the front of the telescope. Yeah, just turn the telescope up, and then this one's got a digital. Can't really
turn it on.
Just see it there, but it's got a digital display system on it. Yeah.
How does it get an even illumination?
It's the way they're made. So lots of people do think, oh, I'll go and get one of those tracing pads off of Amazon or wherever and use one of those. But what you find is that the element in them is normally in like a zigzag across it. So it's not truly flat. And the other thing is that there are very few of them. There's a good way of adjusting them. So if we were doing flats for like a one-shot color camera, it's going to be a lot dimmer than what it may be to do flats for narrowband imaging. So like hydrogen alpha filters or S2 filters, you're going to have to turn the brightness right up. And a lot of these now are USB controlled for the brightness as well. So you plug them into the computer and you can adjust the brightness.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
With a bit of software on there. So
that's nice.
They're pretty cheap now. They've come
down. Do they have ASCOM drivers for those yet?
I don't know. I've not actually got one of the new USB ones here yet.
That'd be kind of a neat thing to have. I don't know. I don't think it's part of the ASCOM platform right now, to tell you the truth, on the list of components.
But it does make it really easy on capturing the flats and setting them up. And if you set that to an average brightness, you can get your exposure times down below 2 seconds. Once they're down below 2 seconds, there's very little use for dark flats, which is what a lot of people have been doing over. So that's become quite a popular thing. The software's now added that in, but with the flats panels, there's very little reason to have it.
Right.
So the different kinds of calibration frames that you have is you have dark frames, you have flat field, you have bias frame. Any others?
Yep. I use bias. I always have used bias. I know that some people say that you don't need it, but the software is still asking for it, and it calibrates in different ways. I was using a different piece of software the other day, and I didn't have bias or dark flats. And then it was getting humpy with me because I haven't got those. Yeah, so it's asking, I want those to calibrate the flat frames.
Well, the nice thing about the bias is that you can apply it to the darks, and you can scale the darks wherever you need. Instead of, you don't have to take specific times for your darks if you're not going to use the bias.
Yeah, it's I generally find that, so we've got two things to correct on the modern cameras, and that's standard amp glow, which would normally be a brightness along the bottom or maybe up in a corner. But you've also got the electronic noise, and the electronic noise looks more like fingers coming off at some point across the image. And that's normally created where the connection to the sensor is, to the board. So in the old days, you would buy a sensor and you would make your own board and mount the sensor on the board, whereas now they all come from the manufacturer pre-mounted. So you have to build your camera around that pre-mounted board. But the problem is then is if there is an issue with this electronic noise, it works the same way as an amp glow, and we have to correct it in the same way. And that means you need to take the dark frames at exactly the same settings as the light captures. So if we were taking 60 seconds and over 100 gain, for instance, we would have to do that on the dark frame. But there are also other little things in there. It's quite common. I might come in here, for instance, let's just say that camera there is the one that I've been using, and I might think, well, I do my darks indoors. I can cool the camera down, but I change the cable. The cable length is very slightly different. That will affect the subtraction of darks. So you won't get a correct subtraction, and you'll still see these fingers coming through the image. So there's lots of tips and tricks in this, or changes, should I say. It's not really tips and tricks in a sense, it's changes over the years.
Sure.
As these cameras are changing, and these are changing really rapidly. You know, we're getting new models of cameras out roughly every 3 months now from different manufacturers. So they all have their little things that they like and don't like.
Thing that they do. Yeah. So are there any cameras out there that you think are, I mean, ultra quiet, super responsive, that are in this affordable range? I mean, what would you be recommending?
I still like a CCD camera. I think a CCD camera offers a cleaner image when you're actually looking at the image. But the CMOS cameras allow us now to take shorter images. So there's people out in countries like Poland where there's not, you know, masses of money for astronomy and things like that. So lots of them will have USB 2 computers, and they're using non-cooled cameras, some things like this. They're using these sorts of things, and they're doing some really nice deep sky images. You know, I've seen images of the dumbbell M27, and what they're doing is taking, say, 200 or 300 20-second shots through USB 2, and then stacking those through. And they're coming up with some really nice results. And you know, looking at the phone image earlier, you know, Mike's phone image that you put up, these sorts of things, all of these, the changes in the technology are allowing us now to come around a lot of the problems. So, you know, you might have an AZ mount, for instance, or you know, you might have a mount that's a real pain to polar align. You don't have to be so precise on all of this. If you just want to go out the door and have a bit of fun, take an hour's worth of images, and the software is taking, you know, into account what's going on with the images. It's derotating, it's doing all of the other things now. In the old days, it was a lot of hard work. You know, everything had to be precise. And I'd hate to think how many images I've chucked away over the years. You know, been out all night taking loads of image sets, and then you get in and they're out of focus, or, you know, the exposure or gain or whatever else you're using on it is wrong, the ISO, and you're chucking them away. But, you know, you can get into this now and not spend a lot of money. You can go and buy one of these smaller cameras for, you know, £200 or £300, and you can venture into the world of deep sky imaging.
Is that the what the price now for thermoelectrically cooled cameras? I know that was the biggest hurdle.
There are a bit
coolers
more
are
the cooled ones, but these non-cooled ones, the CMOS non-cooled, both of these are very, very similar in a sense. They're just different brands,
right?
They're because the camera's not getting so hot, and really as well, software like PixInsight allows you to deal with noise. It corrects the noise so well that this isn't an issue. Whereas before we were saying, oh, you've got to get the camera down. You know, you really have to cool it massively. Because you're taking short exposures, you're not imprinting a lot of noise onto the actual sensor or onto the actual exposure.
Right. That's a big thing, getting over that hurdle with the noise and not having to cool and have an inexpensive camera, like you said. That's a big thing. Some
of the cameras we were working on, say 3 years ago, they were the 183 sensor. Those were around a lot in non-cooled versions, and we were getting some really good images out of them. But again, they work best at around anything up to sort of 60 seconds. Once you're getting into cooled, but as you know yourself, if you try putting in, let's say we've got a DSLR and we took 200 images with a DSLR and tried putting that into Deep Sky Stacker, there's a good chance your computer would have crashed 4 years ago, and you know, you get up in the morning and it might have processed them. These days, even though we're getting large formats from the cameras, the software and the computers can handle it really well, even quite a basic computer. So, you know, having solid state drives, all of these sorts of things that we're taking for granted every day of the week now, in most of the equipment, is making it really easy.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing, even though it's a great thing for beginners, unfortunate thing, you don't have to learn as much about your equipment and how it operates to really get good results, which means you probably won't learn stuff about your equipment, which to me is you know, I don't care for that at all. I just soon learn everything about the equipment and understand what it's doing.
I think there are a few, you know, people look at things in a different way. We're all slightly different. Some people just want to go out the door and take an image. They're not interested in the actual mechanics of how that works. And I think you can equate telescopes very similar to cars. Some people want to know how the car runs and mechanically are quite able to jump under the hood and fix it. Whereas other people just want to jump in it and drive it, and they're not interested. Yeah, whether it's electric or whether it takes fuel. Yeah, as they can plug it in and fill it up, and it goes from A to B. I think telescopes are very similar in a sense, and the users. You know what we're seeing now with the small computers like the NUC and the Eagles and the ASI Airs, all of these sorts of things, they're allowing us to connect these cameras at high speed now. So one of the cameras that I've got here does 500 frames a second. Yeah, that's so you put that onto the sun and you can record 5,000 frames literally in 10 seconds.
Yeah, right. Wow. And it freezes, absolutely freezes the atmosphere and gets you all kinds of.
That's it. So that's the thing. I think we're advancing very, very quickly. It's where it actually stops and stabilizes, because we used to have cameras. I've still got one of my old cameras here. Yeah. Let me just grab that. Now, this was the bee's knees of solar capture or lunar capture, which was the Luminera Skynix.
I see.
Yeah, and these were a fortune. That's it's a small format camera. You know, it's not a large camera. It's high-ish speed, should I say? It's 16 frames a second in full resolution. But the images out of it were phenomenal. You know, they really, really were. It was one of the best cameras on the market. Somewhere around probably £1,400, £1,500. So at that time, it was a lot of money for that sort of camera. But you wouldn't change that camera. You wouldn't dream of sort of getting rid of that camera. Whereas now we're getting a new range of cameras coming out probably every 3 months.
Yeah, goodness.
Looking at
that's got to be a little confusing, and you know,
there's probably 60 cameras in this building.
For people that are like, okay, well, do I just wait another year, or how often should I change cameras? You know,
I think the biggest
better technology
that you're seeing with the cameras is the difference between the types. Is that these more professional CMOS ones, something like these two, these will run on actual imaging sensors. Yeah, so that they've got high definition color on them. They've got very, very little noise in the background, things like that. Whereas a lot of the other sensors are what we call like a machine vision sensor. Yeah. So they are a sensor that would be used maybe for reading car number plates, conveyor belts in factories with fast barcode reading, those sorts of things. So those sensors generally have a little bit less color in them. That's what you're finding between the two.
And the repurposed security cameras too, that are very low light. That was a staple for video cameras.
But what you have to remember in this is none of these sensors are built for astronomy.
Right.
Yeah. There's not a company that makes a sensor for astronomy. They're actually made for another purpose. And manufacturers in this industry are redesigning the sensor and rehousing the sensor and cooling it for our market.
Right.
And I think that's the key with this. So there will be niggles with different things. There will be niggles with camera speeds or other things. And same with the electronic noise and amp glow. It's gradually all getting ironed out of these cameras, but it's taken a little bit of time.
What do you? I have a contention that, or a thought that these cameras, we're taking advantage of the mass production of the cameras, and they're doing what we want. But the camera technology is going to move on and leave astronomy behind, is what I'm thinking going to happen. So you're not going to have near as many camera chips made for astronomy that you can use for daily consumer level stuff.
Yeah, I think there is a concern with things like mobile phones. If you look at the picture quality that you get out of a mobile phone now, is very, very close to a standard DSLR, a cheap DSLR image. So it's convenience then. People are going to look at it. Do I really, and I suppose the same as, astronomy, what we were saying earlier, do I really want to learn that camera, or do I just want to press a button and get an image? And that's the sort of key thing. And that means that the sensors are going to get smaller. There's a good chance of these sensors now getting smaller, and then, will they be acceptable to be used for astronomy? Will they actually work with astronomical equipment in the future? So
that's a concern.
Yeah, there has been rumors for a while that these sensors will change.
And I imagine they might, but is it a matter of just changing focal length to?
I don't know. I think we're quite adaptable, aren't we? I think once we see it in front of us, somebody go, if we put that lens in front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that will be the change. I think that's the difference now. We can model things and we can work things out very, very quickly. So on paper, I can see there being an issue, but I can also see us coming up with a fix for it fairly
Seems like
quickly.
Amateurs always do,
Yeah. I think that will be the issue, but there might be a case of it not working on certain focal length systems for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't an immediate change. This is something probably, 4 or 5 years time, as we're moving more down the road of everything becoming more compact.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. What do you guys think about, there was a big uproar early on about the Starlink satellites, ruining astrophotographs, and now, and I still continue to get email, asking me what they should do or how they should prepare for it or whatever, because there's only, I think maybe a couple of thousand satellites up there right now.
I think it's 1,300 or something. 1,300.
Yeah, and there's supposed to be I think Elon Musk has applied for over 40,000 satellites.
Well, the UK one collapsed through the COVID. It run out of funding and everything else. So that's gone down. Now, whether somebody else will buy that, I don't know. But that did have the potential to put up more. And I know other countries have been looking at it. I think it depends on how they're all clustered together when they're finally up there. That's the key thing. I mean, one of the first trains that went through last year, that was 15 minutes long. Yeah, a perpetual train of the Starlink.
I see.
In a line. And, from a spectacle point of view, you've never seen anything like that running for that long, coming through the sky. It was literally like the longest train you've ever seen, just continual coming through the sky. But we've not seen that since. These things have spread out. We've seen them in different formations.
I think the biggest time to see them too was in twilight, before sunrise and after sunset, was really because the sun angle was such that you could see them easily. But they've put those shades on them and done a lot of work. I think they don't talk about it, but if you go to the Starlink website, I think they have a page that talks about the technology they use to shade it.
Yeah, I mean, the most I think I removed about 40 or 50 satellites from an image set. you go through times a year when different targets seem to be susceptible to satellites running through, depending on where its location is in the sky. And I can remember doing an Andromeda where we took out, it was definitely over 30 satellites straight out of the image. And that again is software. The software is applying the fixes to it.
Right. I've seen the geostationary satellites too. Have you run across those? Those are kind of cool to see.
You can get some of the spinners as well. So when you actually look at them through a telescope, you see them 1 second and you don't see them the next, and they're rotating. So the light catches and then they go into eclipse and then it catches again. And it looks weird because you're seeing this flashing object through the telescope, through the sky. But I think the software, again, it will keep going. You know, it will evolve around all of this. Really, like what I was saying with some of the calibration frames that it's asking for now, some of us have never used them. You know, so it's asking, the software is moving really with the market of the amateurs, of how they're asking for things and how they want things. So it is adjusted. And I think we're pretty quick at getting things these days done. You know, there's no wait on it. Years ago, it would have been, oh, we'll see what we can do, and you'll probably get it in about 3 years' time. Now it's within a couple of months, you know, somebody's got a fix for something or they've worked something out.
Well, with software, you've got a huge software industry in the world. So you got hundreds or thousands of people working on this stuff, you know, really is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there will be quite a lot of changes moving along. I mean, there's other things. I mean, I've had a mountain the other week. We had it drop down to -10 and it got hypothermia. The USB socket started collapsing. It's like, well, we've known about that for a long, long time, that USB is susceptible to temperature change, on data transfer. If you want to go and buy the cheapest socket off the shelf and put it in the mount, expect it to fail at some point. Some things are a learning curve, but other things are not a learning curve because the information's there. It's a budget that's put on a product, and that's
right.
The killers of the use of the information. So you could, you can have all the information in the world there, but if a bean counter comes along and says we're going to save 5 cents here, on each mount in this area and 5 cents there on something else, that's it. You know.
You have to hold the line on that stuff for electronics.
Yeah. There's lots of things that occur.
Neither one of you guys seem overly concerned about Starlink, as far as.
No, I think at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, that's very true.
The other thing is that there's some benefits. There's a lot of benefits to it. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you need an internet connection,
that's exactly one of the things I'm thinking of.
And the software, even today, the software takes care of the satellites we have today. It's the number of satellites doesn't really matter when it comes down to it.
Right.
And if you think about it, let's just say the object's there. Yeah. In a month's time, it's going to be there. So if that's the path that Starlink's taking through, they're not going to track that one object through the night sky. So you'll just have to move your timing of the month to when you image it. That's the key thing. And I think a lot of people over the last 2-3 years are working that out on objects anyway with weather, because the weather's been quite bad in general everywhere. We're not seeing the same seasons that we're seeing.
That's the thing. We complain about these little dots flying around the sky, but we don't care about clouds getting in the way.
Yeah.
Gary does. He complains about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I used to be one that would, that object to be higher up next month. I'll go for the object when it's higher up.
I see.
Now it's a case of when that object's in the sky, you grab it.
Right.
Yeah, because
a clear patch of.
Yeah. what I've noticed the last 2 or 3 years is you're going to go that maybe 2 months we're not getting onto that target. So yeah, as soon as it's available in the night sky, that's it. We're on it.
And I think the technology's come along to allow you to do that too, to take more advantage of all the opportunities you have, you know.
I mean, I think it was 2 weeks ago I imaged M104 Sombrero. And, you know, normally that would be a target that you would be running after in probably around April, May, somewhere around there. You wouldn't necessarily be imaging it this early in the year, but it was a case of it's up, let's go for it. And yeah, it was okay. You know, would have been nicer to be higher. It would be a bit clearer, but you're still getting the object.
Still getting it. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, you know, and what you can do with image processing, you've really been able to do some amazing stuff. And I think it's great, Gary, that you show other people how to do this. So, you know,
thanks. A lot of people don't
yourself, but you know, it's nice. It's nice that you teach others how to raise the bar. So
yeah, but it's about keeping it simple. I think this is the key. I mean, a lot of people don't really realize I hate image processing. I'm bored with it. If I spend more than an hour on a target, of processing those images up, I really have had enough. I want to switch the computer off. I love getting the equipment up and running and the capturing and everything else, but actually the processing side, it bores me. So what I try and do is work out the easiest paths through the software. So I will spend hours and hours to work out what way to come through a piece of software, what way to get the images out. And that's really what you're showing people, is how to get around a lot of the stuff that you don't need to do.
Does PixInsight have a lot of batch processing, so you can work out a procedure and just run it, and then you don't have to worry about it?
You can do a lot of stuff. I mean, that mistake I made the other week on the image where I had it rotated, from the camera settings being held in, you can just batch process the whole lot through and just derotate the images, just put them in a process folder in a sense, and then drop it on the process, and you've rotated them around. Whereas in the old days, you'd be every single image. And if you think, 70 or 80 lights, same with the biases, same with your darks, you might have 30 or 40 dark frames there, plus all the images you captured. You're going to be there for 3 nights just rotating the images.
Oh man!
Before you've even got onto the processing. So
right, and you probably actually went through all that process.
I think it also depends on how computer minded you are, and there are there's a lot of people who are not computer switched on. They don't like computers or whatever, but they're moving their way through. So finding the easier routines around things really works for them, because you're helping them cut down on doing something that they don't like, and that's actually working on computers. I have times of the year where I don't switch it on. I get bored with computers. I've had enough of them, so I just I have a week out, 2 weeks out, and the computer doesn't even go on.
Wow. Unplugged.
I think everybody gets like it. You get bored of sitting in front of them, and
I think psychologists say that that's pretty good for you.
But there's quite often a time of year where I don't even want to look at the images that we captured, and there's probably a good, I don't know, I'd hate to think, I mean, there's probably 60, 70 targets that are never processed each year, that the batches just sit there, they're on hard drive somewhere, that we've never got around to even looking at them.
You feel like a slave to the data sometimes? You got so much data that you just a slave to it?
Yeah, because you have to remember, in what I'm doing, most of it is testing. So we're running it for a test. We might have had it running, for 12 hours through a night, over 4 or 5 nights, if it's ever cleared that long. And you only process one set of the data. You look at it, you go, yep, that works fine. you know, and you're off onto the next piece of equipment. So the data sets just sit there. Sometimes I do go through the hard drives and I'll have a look at a set and go, oh yeah, I remember that. That was quite nice. We'll process that one up. But each year I would say there's probably a good third to nearly half that don't get processed.
So let me ask both of you a question here. You know, a lot of times I ask, you know, in these shows and stuff, and I've asked both of you guys, you know, what was the tipping point that got you interested in astronomy? Let me ask us a different question. How do you guys keep from getting burned out? Okay. Now I've been into amateur astronomy since about, I mean, on a serious note, since 1980. I know how I do it, but what do you guys do?
I think it's managing your time. I think it is time management with it. And you do have to learn to turn around and say no every now and then, which is probably quite hard because if you enjoy doing it. But, you know, I came from racing motorcycles, and then I took out a large company training people. So I turned my hobby, even though it was a bit more than a hobby, but I turned that into my actual business.
Yeah.
And now I don't ride at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to manage
well,
it.
that happens in this industry too. There are
Yeah.
people that enjoyed amateur astronomy, got into the telescope business, and man, after 5 p.m., man, they don't even want to look at a telescope. You know, they don't even think about it. You know,
I got in a little different. My whole career, I get bored quickly, so I like to learn new things constantly and jump from one project to the next. And I'll share what I do with the guy, get him trained up on it, and then I'll move on to the next. So that's how I'm able to move on in my career, was to learn something and then push it off to somebody else so I could move on to something new. So I think for me, it's a lot more work, but having the diversity of stuff that I'm working on helps me stay motivated.
Right.
It's probably the same here because we've got so many different pieces of equipment and new stuff that's being designed and sent in, or you're working in the background on a new idea that's either you or someone else has come up with. So there is a constant revolving change of this stuff. And as I said, I like getting the equipment all up and running and sitting there watching the images fire down.
Sure.
Yep, that's all running. Everything's sitting in the center of the screen. The guiding's working. You know, that, as far as I'm concerned, that's my job done. But if you don't put images out, nobody sees that you're actually doing that.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
I would say the same thing. I like, you know, when you just think of something to do or to try and you jump over that hurdle and you finally get it to work, that's the payoff, you know.
Yeah. I think it's no different if, like what I do, you image the sun, you go after that daily prominence or whatever it is, that capture, and you'll be on a mission to get it. You know, it doesn't matter what way you work out or the equipment. So you will take a look at the sky on the first piece of equipment that you put on and go, yeah, I can get away with that. And sometimes it'll be the 152s or bigger coming out, and another day it'll be like a 90mm coming out. It will work around the conditions, but it doesn't matter what's there. It's still that challenge of getting, you know, that object. And I think that's a bit different when you look at like deep sky imaging. As much as I love doing it, next year the objects will still look the same. Yeah,
right.
Something like a supernova go off or whatever. Theoretically, the object will still look the same. I like things like solar. I like comets. Because the speed of the comet is a challenge again. Working out the speed of the comet to your capture time, all of that sort of stuff. It brings a different level of challenge in there. So, you know, the first night's going to be a waste of time on the comet. Yeah, you're just using that to work out the timings and the different other things. The second time you get onto it, that's when you're going to get the nice detail.
Right. Let's we have comments, questions, kind of going across the board here. Let's see. Cameron Gillis has a lot of comments here. We were talking about Starlink, and Cameron says, I think Starlink would be fun to watch. Already seen several chains just after separation, orbiting after dusk. Let's see. Book Davies, I'll still be waiting. Oh, he says, I'll still be waiting to see if they all go up. See then what the effect is. So far, so good, but we'll have to wait and see. Martin Eastburn says, I think Starlink will be handy if we find a dark sky or site without much along the lines of phone lines. Now, that's the big, I mean, that's what I'm excited about as far as remote astronomy, because this dish, apparently you just pound it in the ground and this thing finds the satellite for you, you know, and it seems to be a reasonably fast link. You know, you don't need like super fast connection to your telescope, but I think it's going to do the job. And I'll make a prediction. I think that almost every amateur astronomer will have a Starlink, or many will if they have an observatory, because you know, why rely on just one source of internet if you're going to have a remote link? You know,
Right.
you want to have,
We're actually
you want to have
talking
redundancy. You know, so
yeah, we're talking about that for the Mark Slade Remote Observatory. Myron and I have been
getting a
talking about that
Starlink
already.
set up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as well, it's how well it increases the speeds for people. You know, around the world, a lot of people are paying a lot of money for substandard speeds in this day and age.
Yeah.
You know, even in quite modern countries, they're still paying a lot of money for some quite poor connections there. So on the positive side of that, if it increases the speeds, it forces competition then. It forces the other companies to invest in upgrading the infrastructure and moving things along. So I think I still have a moral point of view of who has the right to stick something up there that goes around in front of your objects. There is something there on that side that I look at. But yeah.
Yeah. Cameron says, my dream is to set up imaging sequence on my ED80 all night while I do visual in parallel with my new future push to DOB, and then auto download and image processing in the morning. So you're gonna, that's there are a lot of guys that do that, you know.
Yeah, so. And then you start getting into solar, and you work out that all 24 hours is taken.
Yeah, you don't need sleep. That's what coffee's for, guys. So
right. I was going to ask Gary what he thought about solar imaging with the Starlink satellites passing in front of the sun.
I think they're actually too small, really. I mean, even the space station is tiny when it goes through the sun, in front of the sun. So there, unless there was a formed chain there, I don't think you would actually pick them up. They're just not big enough. You tend to pick up, you know, planes and birds, and then the next thing really is the space station. There has been a couple of other larger satellites that have been able to pick up, but I think that will also depend on what wavelength you're looking through at. So if you're in something bright like calcium or whatever, there's a good chance of picking it up. It allows a lot of light through, calcium H, but HA is quite dark, so you wouldn't necessarily pick it up straight away. Maybe in some white light you might. But the exposure times on your cameras are so fast for solar. Yeah, I think you stand a better chance on the lunar. Yeah, because on the, even though we don't really use a filter, in a sense, with the moon, you're probably 3-4 times the exposure time of the sun. Yeah,
I typically, with the quarter moon, it's like 2 milliseconds, 1.5 to 2 milliseconds is what and that's with no filter.
Yeah. So it really depends. You know, we try and keep the cameras down on solar in a HA filter somewhere around 7 milliseconds, 7 to 8 milliseconds. If you use something like the quantum, you'll probably be running up to about 20 milliseconds because of the contrast. It's a real contrasty unit. Once you come down in the angstroms, So therefore your exposure time goes right up, which is still okay. It's just, you know, with some of the cameras, they work better if you don't record at full flat out speeds. You know, if a camera records at 130 frames a second, you get a lot more detail per image recording at 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second. And then you don't need so many frames to stack. So you, instead of, you know, recording, say, 4,000 frames and stacking, you know, a third of those or a quarter of those, you could come down to 1,000 frames because they've got a lot more definition in each frame. So you'll need less of them to stack together. And that, you know, the high speed stuff works well in the UK because the gap's in the cloud. So if we've got cloudy days and you've got the blue gaps there,
Sure.
in 10 seconds, you can fly through that gap before the next cloud comes along and away. But if you've got a lovely clear blue sky, a slower camera will give you a lot nicer and a deeper image than a high speed one.
Well, that's why I like using the configuration we have for deep sky on the Mark Slater Remote Observatory. I use that for doing lunar imaging with the high dynamic range images, and they're very slow. It takes me like 20 minutes to acquire 2,000 frames, but and I do 10%, typically stack 10% of those, and I get the sharpest images that I've ever seen with the full frame, with the big field, you know, 1 degree, 1.3 degree field.
I've got
critically
it on,
sampled, you know, it's all.
I've got it running tonight. We've got intermittent cloud coming through, but I've got a 1600 GT, which is a deep sky camera called, and that's running on the moon, and the images off of it are fantastic. And if you're into doing like getting the mineral colors out on the moon, yeah, something like the 183 colors, they're absolutely superb.
Oh,
for
really?
doing, full
Very
dish
cool.
shots of the moon. Yeah, and then you just balance the colors up in PixInsight, something like that, and hey presto, you've got these really nice colors coming out.
I've been
So
doing, I haven't tried doing the color process. I'm not very good at it, but the camera we have is a 163 QHY, and I do it with the, you know, full resolution, one shot color, and I use Sharp Cap to acquire the data.
Yeah, the same as what I use here. Yeah, it's really good because you can adjust the settings so easy on it. And the added bonus is so many cameras plug into it these days. Yeah, it's some of the other software is good, but then you'll get another camera there and you can't get it running in it, and you know it keeps dropping the link to the camera. So I've been using Sharp Cap now for probably 4 or 5 years, something like that. It's what we mainly show in the workshops. You know, certainly for lunar and solar. But the other good thing is the flat fielding in it. So if you actually put it onto the sun, let's say we're using something like a Quark, defocus it on the sun. Yeah, selects the capture flat field from the drop-down menu. It will live subtract the flat field from the video that you then capture. And that's brilliant because the biggest bane of your life is getting dust off of these sensors. Yeah. Yes. And everybody forgets that in the daytime it's dusty, it's dry, you know, the wind blows around. As soon as I take this off of something, yeah, it's covered in it. And some manufacturers are really bad for it. I mean, there's some of them, the Skyris cameras, I am sure that they coat the glass on the front of it in like a static material. Literally, you take it out the box, you pull the cap off the end of the camera,
adhesive,
and it just goes.
Sucks the dust. It's a dust vacuum.
And you know, you've got these. You know, you've got cotton buds, and you're cleaning them, and you know, you've got like one of the rocket blowers. You're blowing it off. These are the next favorite tool for any of those sort of cameras.
And you never seem to get the dust out of the corners and all the little nicks and crannies. You know, you can never get it out of there.
What about that material you can swab on and then it dries and peel it off?
There is. You can find, you've got to be really careful because you won't really see it on that. But if what one's that one? It'd be this one. Most of these have got some form of coating on them So
Sure.
if I see the red coating on that,
Yeah.
right, that's got two coatings on it. It's got an IR coating, and it's got an AR coating, an anti-reflective one.
Sure.
And you know the like lens wipes, just like a standard lens wipe that you would use for cleaning glass, they can remove the coatings. So you have to be really careful with some of it. So
coatings should be harder than that. You know, when
there is a polymer solution now, isn't there, that you can
there's a polymer, and it's they often show up at I think they were at the Advanced Imaging Conference in San Jose a year or so ago, and
this is the worst one. This one, these are literally the worst cameras for this, and it is the glass that's in the front there.
You can't get to it.
You can get to it, but it's got like a static coating on it. So literally, the second you've cleaned it, it drags any dust out of the air straight back onto it. So you end up using an anti-static cleaner. Yeah, so
and that's what you need. That's what you need.
First,
there used to be photographic brushes that had like an anti-static.
Yeah, it had an ion. It was as a radioactive alpha emitter. What it was. That's exactly what it was.
In your pocket, right? So
it attracted it basically neutralized the static.
But what you're finding is like using that the subtraction in sharp cap, you can have pretty good amount of dust on the front of the optics or the camera, and it'll subtract them straight out of your live video. So that is a massive bonus.
There's from the chat here, people were wondering how to capture the International Space Station, and they, what is the speed that it's moving across the sky? One person had commented about 15 arc seconds, or 15 degrees a second, or something like that, or a minute.
No, I got it about a decade ago, and it was on a 66 millimeter with a Canon camera on the back, handheld.
Okay.
And you could actually see the shuttle attached on the side of it.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was just playing around, getting the focus right, and then running across the sky.
So you got to just move it,
because
there's no amateur equipment that flew that fast. Yeah.
And most people release the clutches and move the mounts manually, rather than try and move them through the motoring system.
There is there's a program that was written for the Meade series telescopes that's out there. There's another one that I just got. I was talking to the developer a couple years ago. I downloaded it and was looking at it, because that program he wrote was supposed to work with any mount with an ASCOM driver, as long as you could slew and send move commands fast enough, which our system will do. I never got much further with it. I was playing around with it, but never, because we've had some customers ask about being able to track satellites. The main thing is to be able to calculate the position accurately. And
I think the LX 200 had that on board as standard, that they would track the space station, the speeding for it.
Ron Dantowitz a long time ago had written software for tracking satellites and I think maybe imaging them as well. I know that he got all this information off the internet to find where the satellites were, including spy satellites.
Yeah.
This got him a visit from the FBI.
Well, there's a whole group of people that.
But he had to show them how he got it off the internet. He says right here, this is not the dark web. This is in the public domain.
Right. There's a whole group of people that Myron's been talking to that track satellites and identify objects. So if you image something that looks like a satellite or some long lost booster that's out there in between, the Earth and Mars, or something, out there, you can find it and find out what it is with this group that he's been working with.
That's very cool.
And
well, very good. Mr. Jason Keller had sent us a couple of images. I'm going to show you what he was anxious to have me show these. So let's see if I can. Here we go. He got his observatory tent and he set it up in his living room. This is with the top on it. And let's see if I can pull up the other one here. Stop sharing. It's not coming up. Come on. There it is. This is the other one here. So he's apparently doing going to be setting up his telescope at home, but glad you're really enjoying it. So we need like a full rundown, Jason, on your review of the observatory tent. I'm thinking about actually making maybe a bigger one in sometime in the future, but for now, this is what we have.
Well, I was hoping to show you the moon tonight, but I can only show you it off of a pre-record. So if I
all right
do that,
there
that
you go.
was the moon earlier. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, apart from that,
Oh yeah.
as you can see in the camera in the background there, the clouds are still pulling through. It's like it's more like a fog tonight. It's like a level of fog moving through, but we've had quite a temperature change over the last couple of days. So we've gone up in temperature. So
Yeah, it's been really warm here in Virginia. It's been 70 degrees the last couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah, we moved up. I think we're about 12 or 13 C today, which is quite warm to what it has been. So a couple of places over on the east side of England, they're a lot warmer.
Okay, well, great. Well, Gary, any big plans this weekend? And are you just going to continue plugging
not
away?
really. We're doing working as usual. So we're running courses and doing other things. And if it's clear, then capturing some images.
Nice.
So, and just generally taking it easy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I know that you guys were under a big lockdown for a long time. Is that still in effect? Or
yeah, we've probably got about another 3 weeks, and then they start opening up different areas. So how long before you can go and sit in a bar and have a beer is a different kettle of fish.
Oh, that's different. That's right. Well,
yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. But they seem to be running through the vaccination program pretty rapid over here.
Oh, that's very good.
Seem to be running through that quite well. So, and some of the kids have gone back to school, so they're looking at the other half going back in about 3 weeks.
That's good.
Yeah, that'd be a result, some peace and quiet then.
Right. Right. Well, wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you, Gary. Thanks for coming on to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on, as always. Gary will be our official co-host for the European edition of the Global Star Party next Friday. So what is that, March 5th? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we'll post the exact time and everything for that. But as I remember it to adjust for your time and everything, it starts at about the time that we would normally start our afternoon show. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you. Always good fun.
Take care, man. Take care. And Jerry, we'll switch to you. I know we've already kind of burned up an hour here, but I know that today we were doing some beta testing, the new firmware, and we talked a little bit about getting that firmware out to the opening up for more beta testing just out to the OpenGOTO community at large. So
yeah, I think that's a good plan. I think so. We'll have this first week or two with the closed beta with our people that are doing it right now, and then I want to give a shout out to Bob Hoskin and Chuck Lewis.
Yeah,
they've been providing good feedback with the beta testing, and so next week, maybe by the middle or the end of next week, we may open it up for a public beta test. So it'll be available to download on our website for anybody that wants to give it a try. And we want to work out, these bugs that we have right now. We got a couple of little issues that we're dealing with, but overall, it's looking pretty good. We do run into things for differences between different people's machines that are causing some issues. Like Bob Hoskins running Windows 7. Which I know a lot of people still run, and or a few people anyway. They like how stable it is, and then Windows 10. And there's a couple of little niggly things you have to deal with when you install. One thing I've found is that because we've changed the driver profile, which is basically a profile is basically all the data parameters that are when you set up the driver. Those get stored in a registry thing and an SCOM registry profile. And I've changed one or two of those parameters that are different values now. So it burps on that. So you have to go out and manually either change the value or wipe that setup out, and then you can install the driver. So I'll have instructions on that. I don't know if there's a way for me to actually automate that change. It's just something that it's hung out there because I've made a change to the profile. So that's one thing that is going to be in the instructions. And I just want to, anybody that's listening to this that has plans on running the beta test once we release that next week, maybe, it's important that you read the materials I send out before you just jump in and install it and expect it to work. It will more than likely, but but again, you never know. That's why we're beta testing.
This is beta. That's right.
That's right.
So. We are looking for the, different ways that someone can break the system. So,
right.
Usually I'm pretty good at that. You just give it to me and I break it.
Wes is good at finding problems. Who else? We have a couple of people that are really good at finding these little things that,
right,
that come out of the blue that are just one shot type things that don't, you never have a use case for this, but they found it. That's always a good thing.
Excellent. So one of the things I wanted to also give a shout out is Gary Palmer Astronomy. If you look him up on the web, and I'll actually put his link in here. He does do training. I think most of you are aware of that. But his website is astrocourses.ca or co.uk. So let me just put this in here. Not CA, that's Canada, Scott. There we go. They'll show you some more about Gary Palmer, but go to the homepage on that link and you can see more about the courses there. So, and I think that we, we kind of planned to do a whole mentor thing, but Jerry, I think it's time to say goodnight, and we'll catch up with that
we can
next week.
We still got a few days of topics left in that, so we can continue the next time we meet.
Excellent. Okay. And until that time, all of you, have a good weekend. Again, we want to, extend our condolences to John Joseph and his friends and family. I also want to let you know that this is not affecting the Starlight Instruments company. It's that company will still is still, fully up and running and will continue to run without interruption. So Wayne Schwartz is running the facility over there, and or one of the guys running the facility over there. And so if you've been thinking about getting a Starlight Instruments focuser, you should probably go ahead and check into it. But they're going to be around for a long time. So, yeah. Anything else, guys?
No.
Nope.
That's it.
That's it.
Thanks for inviting me along.
Thanks so
Always
much,
good
man.
fun.
All right. Take care.
All right. I'll talk to y'all
Take
later.
care, guys.